Welcome to Loco Gringo Mexico, where we can take you beyond the usual on your vacation. Each week we talk with amazing locals who know the Riviera Maya and Yucatan like only locals can. Get real tips to real places, insights on the local scene, culture, and cuisine from a local's perspective. So pour yourself a margarita, mezcal, or tequila, grab yourself a comfy chair, and let's get the show going.
Hola everybody, welcome to Loco Gringo Mexico. My name is Kay Walton, I'm your host. Thanks for tuning in today. Well, we're going to be talking to the general director and editor of the Playa Times. For those of you not familiar with the Playa Times, it is a bi-monthly English newspaper published in Playa del Carmen. Rebecca Page is the general director, and she originally is from New England, which is the northeast section of the United States. And when she relocated to Mexico, she never knew then that she'd be in the newspaper business today. Rebecca's going to share some of the great experiences she's had since she's been with the newspaper, and they're experiences that you can have yourself while you're visiting on your next vacation. She's going to have also a couple restaurant recommendations, of course. And she's also going to talk about, community projects. There's some great stuff going on, as well as debunking a few of the myths that she's learned people have when it comes to Mexico. This episode is brought to you by Playa. You know, lots of people ask us for information and help when it comes to real estate, whether they're looking for retirement, an investment property, or maybe they're looking to relocate to the area. And we refer them over to our friends at Playa. The folks at Playa we've known for years, and they'll make sure that you, the buyer, are fully protected and informed when it comes to buying real estate. So if you're looking to buy a piece of paradise, check out our friends at buyplaya.com.
Hey, Rebecca, this is Kay at Loco Gringo. Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for calling.
Hey, I'm so glad you're a guest on the show. And I have heard so much about you, and I really wanted to get your story firsthand because you're editor of the Playa Times, and I really want to find out how did you end up in the Riviera Maya?
Well, it's kind of a long story, but I'll try and make it short. I'm originally from Connecticut in the United States in the Northeast. I was born and raised. I lived there my entire life. I actually grew up or lived within 20 minutes of the house I grew up in until I turned about 40 when I moved here. So like everybody else, I came here on vacation. My ex-husband and I actually came on vacation. We fell in love with the place, the vibe, the lifestyle that we saw people having down here, and we decided, all right, we're going to go home and figure out how to get down here. And we had a 5-year plan. We came down in probably, I can't remember the first year that we came down here, and had a plan to come down, saved a bunch of money, sold everything that we owned, and the rest is history. We moved down to the Riviera Maya.
Now, when you moved down here, did you have a job, or did you really think you were going to start working for, be in the newspaper business?
No, absolutely not. That wasn't my plan. My plan was, when I came down, the first time I came down, I wound up speaking to a lot of people, and we stayed in a big resort here, which was the first and last time I had stayed in a big resort. And I spoke to a lot of people in the hotel who spoke English really well, and I found out quite a few of them had lived in the United States, and for a variety of reasons were back in Mexico. And all of them had told me, they did other jobs in the United States, so they were trained to do other things. For example, one of the gentlemen that I spoke to, he was actually an experienced welder, and he used to make a lot of money in the United States, and unfortunately he was there illegally and was deported. When he came back to Mexico, the only work he could find was welding work at first, and the pay was so low, and he was probably working, he told me, between 14 and 16 hours a day, sometimes 7 days a week, in really harsh conditions. But he spoke English fluently because he had been in the El Paso, Texas area for many years. So he wound up getting a job in the hotel industry where he was able to make more money than he made welding in much better conditions. And I remember at that moment I thought, well, wow, this guy has this opportunity because he speaks English. So I could teach English. I was kind of naive at that point. But I'll figure out how to teach English, and I'm going to move here and teach English. So my intention was to teach English when I got here. So I did a lot of things to get to that point, including volunteering teaching English in the United States and taking training classes to teach English and eventually becoming SELTA certified. And I moved here with the intention of, I'm going to move to Mexico, get a job, start working, get my work visa and start working. And that really isn't the case. It's actually more difficult than people would think to find an employer who's willing to hire you and giving you a work visa here. So along the way, I actually wound up getting a job with the Playa Times. And I did a bit of writing and then copy editing. And then when the previous editor moved back to England, I got moved into the editor position. And then a few months later, the general manager left, and I was asked to assume that role temporarily. And here I am 1 year later. So Mexico is all about the opportunities that are presented to us and not necessarily the plans that we made. And this opportunity was perfect.
So for our listeners who aren't familiar with the Playa Times, can you tell us a little bit about the newspaper, your mission, and the niche that it serves?
Sure, absolutely. The paper is printed twice a month, and we like to say that it's a local conversation where the tourist is invited. And yes, that kind of sounds like just a tagline, but really we're a bunch of locals. And when I mean locals, I mean people living here who may be from other parts of the world. We have writers from Canada, the United States. We have writers from Mexico, of course. And our goal is to share information about the region that may not be the typical travel-related info that people receive on a variety of websites that are out there for tourists. We want tourists to get to know the region that they're visiting outside of just the tourist attractions that they want to go to. We really want them to get to know the community that we live in and why this community is so unique and frankly quite amazing in some cases. We have people and organizations down here that are doing some really amazing things, and they make the Riviera Maya a great place to visit, but also an amazing place to live. And I've tried to move us into a position where we're educating the reader about the region environmentally, socially, culturally, what's going on in the region. And I also try to offer balanced articles that educate people without preaching. I think that pretty much sums everything up.
Can I ask you, have you found in your time with the paper, are there any misconceptions that you feel that are out there about the Riviera Maya that you guys really try to emphasize, to kind of deconstruct for people?
Yeah, there's so many. We hear, it's hard to explain, but you hear a lot of negative things about Mexico, and I know that some people criticize me for saying this because I'm not going to paint a picture that the region is without crime or without its problems, because it certainly does have crime and it certainly does have problems. But I think from the American or Canadian tourist perspective, or any tourist outside of Mexico, what they really need to realize is that this region is still incredibly safe to travel around and visit and enjoy. And I think a lot of people have that misconception that, the resorts are tainting alcohol, or because they hear stories on the news or they read it on the internet, that they hear a terrible story and they think, oh, this is happening all over, or anything that's related to violence here or crime. Yes, crime does exist here, but not to the degree that I think that many people north of the border think that it's happening in this region, anyway. If
I could know, because I wanted to just add to that, and I think people Mexico is a very large country, and as you said, there are some things like crime that do exist, but you have that almost anywhere. If you're in the wrong part of Houston, or pick a city, or Chicago. Sorry for all our listeners in Chicago, but they make the headlines, I know, a lot in the United States right now. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there's, if you're looking for trouble, you can find it anywhere you go. And just like, if there's issues, say, in New York City or any big city, it doesn't mean it's the same in Los Angeles or San Francisco or Denver. That it's hard. I think people just tend to generalize kind of with Mexico and just throw a big blanket over it and go, oh, it's the whole country. When really, it's really isolated situations, that happen. And we face the same thing with working in reservations and vacation planning as well. And we try to break it down to say, you can't do a big generalization.
Yeah, exactly. And we were actually just talking about that in the office today about, people's perception of Mexico is so different than what you actually experience here. The other thing I would say that perhaps when you're traveling around, or I guess people's perceptions of Mexico and even Mexicans is so different than what you actually experience when you're living here and working and hanging out with and meeting Mexicans throughout the country. I think Americans, and I'll speak for Americans, not Canadians because I am an American, but I think sometimes Americans have this preconceived notion of a stereotypical notion of what a Mexican looks like or sounds like or what their education is like or their experiences are like. And Mexicans are just as varied and just as well-traveled, well-educated, and knowledgeable of the world as a lot of Americans. In some cases, they're more well-traveled than a lot of Americans. I know a lot of my Mexican friends have traveled throughout Europe, throughout South America and Asia because they've had the opportunity to do so. So I think that's something that people aren't aware. They have the stereotypical vision of maybe what Mexicans are like, and it's very different than the reality.
That's a very interesting observation. I wouldn't have thought that there'd be that type of stereotyping going on, but I guess I can see that coming from someone who lives outside the country.
Yeah. I've had friends who are surprised that my Mexican friends have traveled to Europe. I think people have this notion that for some reason they're not allowed to travel outside of just going into the United States. But yeah.
Well, I think also the Riviera Maya in its years of growth has brought all sorts of people from all over the country to the area, and where you may have had more regional people or maybe some less educated or less experienced people 25, 30 years ago, now we have a lot of forward thinkers, entrepreneurs, people who have a broad vision who have moved to the area. And they've brought a lot of color and opportunity to the coast.
Yeah, Quintana Roo has actually provided Mexicans with a significant opportunity, which is why it's such an important state for Mexico and with regards to tourism and job opportunities, because there has been so much growth here, and there is a lot more opportunity here than there are in many other states throughout Mexico. So you're right, there are people who are traveling and living here from all over, from the north of Mexico, from central and south of Mexico, that are living here and doing a variety of jobs that aren't available back home.
You mentioned that you guys that the paper features a lot of community projects. Can you talk a little bit about some of the proactive organizations out there and some of the great things that are happening in the communities?
Yeah, there's quite a few environmental organizations that are doing education work within the community and scientific research. Specifically, I'm thinking of an organization called Blue Core AC, and they are an NGO based here in the Riviera Maya that's studying the spotted eagle rays that move throughout the region, throughout this area in the winter months. And they're working with organizations outside of Mexico to track spotted eagle rays, identify them and track them to see if spotted eagle rays are, if they're moving from Mexico up into Cuba and the United States. And if that's the case, then how do we protect them internationally, not just within the national borders of Mexico or the water boundaries of Mexico? There's organizations that are working within the community. Riviera Maya Sostenible is one that I'm thinking of that is doing things to try and restore or to reforest, if you will, Playa del Carmen. So they've done a couple of different projects. They did the project on 34 in Playa del Carmen between 5 and 10. There's a new walkway and pathway that includes some trees that were relocated from a construction site right next door. And they're also doing a greenway project on Conscientes between 5th and 10th. And they're hoping, Beatriz from the organization is hoping to just keep doing more and more reforestation within Playa to bring back the shade that we need from the heat, but to also bring back the greenery that's been removed from construction that's occurred here. Yeah, I could go on and on. There's a million. And of course, all the animal welfare organizations that are here in Tulum and in Playa that are doing so much to try and curb the problems with stray dogs and stray cats in the communities, and which really benefit not just the animals themselves, but the health of the community. So there's a lot going on out there. In each edition, we try and profile some of these people.
No, that's super, because I think people who visitors to the area, I think they kind of forget, because we all live here, and it's all developed, and that there's a lot of great community action programs that are kind of like unsung heroes, because everybody all the promotional pieces that are out in the world are always focused on the beach or the Mayan ruins, when in fact there's just a lot of great work being done in the various communities all along the coastline. So it's wonderful that you guys feature them. So
yeah, and another one I'd like to mention real quick is KKIS, which I'm sure you've heard of, Keeping Kids in School. They're another organization that does amazing work here in the Riviera Maya. Unbeknownst to a lot of people, students here cannot go to school if they don't have a birth certificate. And many children are born out in rural communities where their parents may not have applied for a birth certificate if the mother had given birth at home, or they didn't apply for it in the correct, appropriate amount of time that's required by law. And a lot of kids don't have birth certificates, so a lot of kids aren't going to school. And what KKIS, when they discovered that, they started working very hard to work with the parents to be able to get these students into school, whether it be helping them through the process of applying for a birth certificate or whatever was necessary. And they've helped sponsor so many students, and I can't quote exact numbers, but they're another organization that's really working hard to get kids into school and like their name says, to keep kids in school. And that's incredibly important in this region, incredibly.
So I'm amazed just at the volume of information that you have off the top of your head, which is great. But what do you do anything in terms of what keeps I should say this, is that what is your passion that keeps you here? Is it to be with the paper, and is it your career and work that really drives you, or do you have something? Is there something else behind the curtain that just says, "Oh my God, I just love this area so much"?
I hope my boss doesn't hear this, but no, I would say of course I have passion for the paper and my work, but what keeps me here really is just there's so much more for me to learn. There's so much more that this region can teach me, and that the country can teach me, and I feel a very deep connection with Mexico and the people of Mexico, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way, like I'm trying to culturally appropriate Mexicanness or anything like that, but there's a strong, deep-rooted culture throughout the region and all over the country, and I'm just not done learning about it. And living in Mexico it's a very different, it's a very different way of life, and the standard of living has its advantages that aren't available to me in the U.S. And the challenges that Mexico poses to me are challenges that I welcome. And yes, sometimes I'm frustrated with them, but they keep me fresh and energetic and interested. And life isn't easy here for anyone, but it can offer you something very, very different that living in your home country doesn't. And it's difficult to explain, but basically what keeps me here is that I still have so much to learn. I'm not done learning.
Can you share any of the lessons that really stick in your mind that you've learned over the years?
I would say one of the big lessons that I'm still learning is that, and you can learn this anywhere, but for some reason I've learned it the hard way here, but that everything works out in the end. I thought at my age, at 40-something, I won't say my actual age, but 40-something, that I'd have all the answers. But, I realized that I still, like I said earlier, I have so much to learn. And one of the things I used to get very stressed out over whether something is going to work out, and eventually it always does. It may not work out the way that you thought it was going to, but eventually it'll happen. It'll work out the way it needs to. Patience is probably something that I've learned here, and I guess a lot of, including my coworkers, would tell you that I haven't exactly learned it. But you need to slow down here. You can't force things, whether it be standing in a bank line and being frustrated that a bank line even exists, or, I don't know, waiting for your cable to be installed at your house or waiting for someone to show up. Things don't move at the same pace as they do in the United States, and you just have to learn to slow down and accept it. There's not much you can do about it.
Actually, I don't think there is anyone who has moved to Mexico who is a foreigner that has not learned or has continually in the education process of patience.
Yeah, yes, I'm still getting there. Some days I'm better than others. Some days I handle it better than others. I'm getting there.
No, I'm still the same. I think I've been in the country now 25 years, and patience is still a lesson every day. Some days I have to shake my head and go, I can't believe I've made it this far sometimes.
Yeah, I actually enjoy it when my Mexican friends become impatient, because they always give me such a hard time about, oh, Rebecca, you need to relax and not let stuff out of you. But then when I finally see them kind of lose it with something, I say, oh, okay, you need to relax and slow down and just, deal with it. So, yeah, it's something I'm still working on.
But I think that's actually a little bit of a lesson that our listeners can take away is that they come and visit the area. Not that they need patience. Yes, sometimes you do. You're gonna have to wait coming into the country, sometimes at the immigration line at the airport, or there's some things for sure. But just because we move life a little bit slower, if everybody moved a little slower and take appreciation for that moment that they're in, as opposed to rushing it through. And I know so many people who come down to the area and they plan every single moment that they're on the ground. Yeah. And they're gonna, with a plan like that, it's going to be some frustration into it, but that they should really just slow down and appreciate where they're at the time they're there. And they'll find it to be a much richer experience than trying to struggle and fight. What is it? What you resist persists. That if everybody took just a breather, exhaled, and go, wow, everything's going to work out in the end, and they'll find that they're really going to have a fabulous experience. May not be the experience they thought, but it's going to be a good experience in the end.
Yeah, and I think you have to you have to adjust your expectations. I still, to a degree, have a very type A personality, and that has, when I first moved here, it was very, very challenging for me. But, like I said about learning, and I'm still not done learning. I'm not done learning about myself, and Mexico's probably taught me more about myself in 5 years than I ever learned in my 40 years before that. So, yeah.
Now, did you have to learn Spanish? Did you come with Spanish already, or was that one of the things you have learned in your tenure here?
Well, I thought I spoke Spanish when I moved here because I had learned tourist Spanish, and I thought, oh, that'll be good enough. But no, I took Spanish in college, and I took some classes before I left. But certainly I would say the majority of the Spanish that I've learned has been here. Working at the Playa Times, my Spanish has improved. I say it's improved. I'm sure my employees would tell you differently. But because the team that I work with in the office are Mexican, and so they've taught me so much. Some of it not so good. But I learned most of it while I was here. And contrary to popular belief, I believe you do need to learn. A lot of people say, oh, you don't need to learn Spanish to live here. Yeah, you do. I think to make the experience much richer and to not get incredibly frustrated, you really should do what you can to try and learn the language. Perhaps not fluent, but you need to be able to communicate with people.
I totally agree, and I'm one of those people. My Spanish is grammatically terrible. And living most of my time in Akumal, where the primary language is English, we kind of, being lazy, I think some of us have not taken the opportunity to learn Spanish. But I mean, I can say even now, and I have an extensive vocabulary, that, yeah, it can be really frustrating. And I think on a long-term basis, it serves everyone who's going to live here so much if they take the time and the effort to learn the language better, so that they're not, it'll save on that patience and frustration factor.
Definitely, and it's more enjoyable when you can have a conversation with people in Spanish. You're just going to learn so much more about the people who you're with. If you're sitting at a party or out to dinner with a group of people and people are speaking in Spanish, or a group of people are speaking in Spanish, and you're not part of that conversation, you're missing out on so much. So even being able to have basic conversations with people can expand your experience here so much.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Now, being here in Mexico, do you get a chance to travel a lot? I mean, have you been around to other parts of the country?
I have a little bit. One thing that people always say to me is that, first they want to know why I'm not tan if I live here. I get that a lot. And I have to explain to them that when you live here and you're still working, your lifestyle is very different than someone who's retired here. So I don't get to the beach as much as you would think I would. But I do get to travel a little bit. I have, of course, traveled around the region thanks to the paper. I've done some really cool things with the paper that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to. As far as traveling to other parts of Mexico, I've, of course, traveled to Yucatan, which is really one of my favorite states. It's really a beautiful place. I love Rio Lagartos and Valladolid and Merida, and the state has a very distinct feel about it. That it almost feels like when you cross the border from Quintana Roo into Yucatan, you can feel it. It's just a different feeling in Yucatan, and I really enjoy it. But in terms of other parts of Mexico, my boyfriend is from the state of Morelos, which is in central Mexico, not far from Mexico City, and we've traveled there a few times, and we're about to go again in September. And each time we go, we like to get out and explore. So, for example, in Morelos, we've visited a couple of different pueblos mágicos, which are magic towns. That's how it translates. And it's they're towns that have been identified throughout Mexico with that by having some kind of tourist value to tourism, whether it be culturally or ecologically, that it's a valuable location that the Mexican Tourism Board would like to focus on. And so we went to Tepoztlán and we went to Playa Capán, which are both pueblos mágicos. And they're incredibly beautiful places. And that region in central Mexico is so very different from the Riviera Maya. It's mountainous, it's much cooler, and it's a true testament to the biodiversity of the country. I mean, people, I think, if you travel to this region, you think, oh, Mexico's hot. Well, no, Mexico's a giant country and it's incredibly diverse ecologically. And we wound up traveling last time to the state of Mexico, I don't know if you've been to Teotihuacan, which is the archaeological site, just a short trip actually from Mexico City. And it blew my mind because that archaeological site is so very different from the other sites that I've visited in the Riviera Maya or in the Yucatan Peninsula. Because here we have the jungle that surrounds the archaeological sites, with the exception of perhaps Tulum, which is a little more wide open. But Teotihuacan is so, and I know I'm pronouncing it wrong, and my team will make fun of me, but it's so vast and open. There aren't a lot of trees around. It sits in this valley surrounded by mountains, and you really get a perspective of the vastness of this city. And, you sit on top of the Sun Pyramid and you look around and you can imagine what this city, how it functioned when it was a populated city. And it's just incredibly different from this region. And of course, the food. I love to eat the food in central Mexico. So the food is a bit different. Mexican food is very regional. So depending on where you go, you can experience different kinds of foods. And in central Mexico, specifically in the state of Morelos, of course, I love the cecina that's famous from the town of Yecapixtla. So food is always a big driver for me when I'm traveling. And I'm lucky that I live in Mexico because the food is so incredible here.
Absolutely. So it's funny that you should mention food. A lot of people come to the area to try out the cuisine here. Do you have any favorites or favorite dishes or favorite restaurants that you want to recommend and say, hey, if you're going to be in the area, you need to try this or you need to eat here?
There's so many. I have to say one of my favorite places to go is in Playa del Carmen, a place on the street, the avenue called 28 de Julio, 28 de Julio. It's on the, I'm thinking directionally here, west side of the highway. And it's a pozole place called, I believe it's El Castillo. And they have pozole, and pozole is like a really, it's a soup essentially, but it's thick with I order it with chicken, but you can get it with pork, and so it's loaded with chicken or pork, and it has corn, and it's not corn. I think it might even actually be called
hominy. I think they call it in the United States.
Hominy, yes, thank you, hominy. I couldn't think of what that was called. Thank you. And you add things like avocado and lettuce, onion, cilantro, whatever you want to add to it, and it's incredibly delicious. And that's one of my favorite places, and it's also incredibly inexpensive. Actually, talking about food, there's a place that I want to mention. It's an experience that I had with the paper. I've always wanted to learn to cook in the traditional Mexican way, and to learn more about making tortillas and how do you make mole. And, you know, I can go online and I can search for how do I make mole or a mole recipe, and I can probably figure it out on my own. But I prefer to be in an environment where somebody's showing me how to do it. So we had somebody contact us at the paper because we had a little bit of an error in a recipe, and the woman contacted me, and she was very lovely, and she just pointed it out, and she said, you know, I run a cooking school here in Tulum, and if you ever want to, please come down and visit, and I'll give you a class. So I took her up on the offer, and I went down, and I met Lily, and Lily runs Riviera Kitchen Tulum, and it's out of her home in Tulum on the road to Coba, and she offers small cooking classes. And so one of the girls in the office and I went down, and we joined 4 other tourists who were there, and Lily taught us how to make, so much stuff. We learned to make sopa azteca, which is Aztec soup. We learned to make a mole, which moles are incredibly popular here in Mexico. And we made a mole ranchero, which a mole is like a sauce that sauce. It's hard to describe. And, hey, you could probably describe it better than I could. But we had mole ranchero. We made and a whole bunch of other things. And I finally learned how to make tortillas. So I actually went home and I bought a tortilla press. And now I'm making tortillas at home. So I have to say that Lily with Riviera Kitchen Tulum is probably one of my favorite food experiences here, and I highly, highly recommend people check her out for a really authentic experience here in the Riviera Maya.
Wow, you make tortillas.
She didn't. Yes, I can make tortillas. And no, Lily didn't pay me to say that. I'm just absolutely obsessed with her classes.
I want to make sure I get the information. I'd love. I mean, we have a lot of people who ask for cooking schools, and we send them up to the Little Mexican Cooking School in Puerto Morelos, and then I have some friends who have a cooking school in Merida. So would love to connect with her, so we can turn people on to her.
She's lovely. Yeah, she's very funny too. She's got a really phenomenal personality. She's from Oaxaca originally. She learned to cook. Her grandmother taught her to cook, and she does this thing that I adore. She mixes English and Spanish together to the point where you hardly notice it, but I kept picking up on it because she does a little Spanglish, which I appreciate it because it made it more authentic than just somebody sitting there speaking to us in perfect English and teaching us Mexican cooking. She also taught us a lot about Mexican food in general. She gives you a little presentation in the beginning about the history of Mexican cuisine and pre-Hispanic cuisine and how they were mostly vegans, actually, before the Spanish came. They did get their proteins from eating bugs, which doesn't surprise me since we've all probably eaten chapulines, the little grasshoppers. I don't know if you've tried them. Yeah. And she just gives a whole presentation on the importance of corn in Mexican food and tomatillos, which are green tomatoes, and and how important chiles are, the spicy peppers that we have down here. And there's a gazillion of them. And I think that's when I'll finally feel like Mexican, if I can finally figure out all the chiles here. There's so many. It was a great, great experience, and I highly recommend it.
Through your work with the Playa Times, have you discovered any experiences that you would, you've got the cooking aspect, but are there some other experiences that you would suggest to people coming to the area where they're really going to have more of an authentic flair than jumping on a crowded tour bus and going somewhere?
Yeah. Wow, there's so much you can do. That's actually, we were talking before you called, we were talking about this a little bit on what are some of the things that will give you more of an authentic experience here. Like you said, not jumping on a big tour, and I nothing against the big tours, because I think they offer, not everybody's going to be up for the hopping on a small colectivo and driving a few hours to go someplace kind of trip. But I would say, hopping on a colectivo and going someplace, heading even just the colectivos down the highway down to Tulum or to Akumal or wherever you're going to go, to having that experience of getting out on the street a little bit more. Or maybe even finding a small tour company like Community Tours in Chiang Khanh that can offer you a more unique experience, a more authentic experience, in a less crowded experience. Or even they have small eco tours out to some of the Maya villages where the Maya people actually are the ones who are controlling the experience that you're having, and they're earning their income based. It's not like you're paying a large tour company and the tour company's getting all the money. But these people are actually in control of their livelihood. And again, community tours could offer something like that. Renting a car. I know some people are afraid to rent cars here, and when I was a tourist, I never had a problem with a car rental, and I own a car now. I've never had a problem with it. And it's very, very, very easy to get around here. Yes, the driving is a bit crazy, so you do need to pay attention. And yes, you want to make sure you have the proper insurance on your car.
I was just going to say that.
but it can be an enjoyable experience and not one to be afraid of. There aren't banditos, they're not bandits hiding out on the highway ready to rob you. So get out and explore on your own. It's a great way to get to know the region.
I think they don't have to worry about banditos. They have to worry about those topes, those speed bumps you can't see.
Yeah, I still don't understand topes. The topes are the speed bumps that we have that randomly appear. I hit some topes actually coming out of Rio Lagortos one night with my sisters, and I hit a tope. I wasn't driving that fast because I was coming out of a town, but it wasn't clearly marked, and I did have a rental car that day, which I was thankful for because I hit it pretty hard. Watch those topes in Tulum. Going in and out of Tulum, those topes are huge, so slow down.
Exactly, and I just happened to have a rental car last week. While my car was in the shop, I had a rental car. I hit a tope in Tulum. I take the car back, and they said, "Oh, see this front part on the bumper?" And of course, they had rented me a new car, and they said, "This is broken." And of course, it was broken. And I said, "But I didn't hit anything." And they said, "A tope," and I went, "Oh yeah." I hit a tope a little too hard in Tulum on the beach road, and that did it.
Yeah, actually, funny story, one of my friends who's no longer in Playa told me when she moved here, she bought a car, and she's a smart girl, but in this case, it was, she wasn't exactly using her brain. She didn't know she had to slow down for topes, so she would hit topes at, speed. And after a year of hitting topes at speed, she had to get a new car. And so finally someone told her, you need to slow down for that. So watch out for topes and slow down for them.
Absolutely. Wow. Rebecca, I totally enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you would consider being on the show again and sharing some of your new experiences you have with the paper as time goes on. If people how can people reach you, get more information, and dig into some of these wonderful things that you've shared with us?
They can check us out on Facebook at the Playa Times. We're also on the web, www.theplayatimes.com. And they can check us out in paper throughout through Riviera Maya. We distribute in Playa del Carmen, Tulum, Cozumel, Akumal, you name it, and we're probably there. So, yeah, check us out.
Now, is your online version the same as your print version?
Yeah, pretty much all the articles that appear in the paper version generally get uploaded onto our website. Yeah, so we try and put that all up there.
Well, perfect. So if people aren't in the area, they can certainly visit the Playa Times online and stay up to speed with all the stuff that's going on here in the Riviera Maya.
You bet.
Rebecca, thanks so much. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to talking with you again soon.
All right, Kay, thanks very much. Hope to talk to you soon.
Well, are you inspired now to move down here? Do you want to move down here and have a little place of your own? Well, then you need to talk to our friends at By Playa. You know, they have a friendly and knowledgeable international staff. They speak lots of languages, and they are known as being a buyer's agent. Well, what does that mean? That means they are only going to show you and sell you properties they know that have escrituras. An escritura is a title. And it's part of their due diligence to make sure the title is clear, there's no liens, and that the person who's selling the property is actually the owner. By Playa works with lawyers that specialize in fideicomisos, which is a Mexican trust. You may have heard of it already before. And they can address things such as capital gains problems immediately and right up front, so that you have no surprises along the way to closing. So contact our friends at By Playa at buyplaya.com. Well, a big muchas gracias for all of you for tuning in. But before you take off, today's show notes can be found at locogringo.com/podcast, where we have information and links over to the Playa Times, their Facebook page, and information on some of the great places that Rebecca shared with us today. Also, as a reminder, if you need any help here locally, please contact our concierge. Paulina can be reached at concierge@locogringo.com. We love to share what we know, and we also share what we love.
Thanks for listening. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe. For links, show notes, and more information, head on over to locogringo.com or give us a call toll-free at 800-478-0081.
Porque se tragó la luna, estaba enferma la rana. Su madre soba que soba, dedos de pluma la panza. Pensó ranita que luna era una toronja blanca. Y aunque la luna es de leche, la leche estaba cortada. Croa, croa, dedos de pluma. Croa, croa, dedos de agua.